Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and I am here to introduce you to college admissions representatives and other professionals in the field of college admissions. Our purpose is to serve you, the students and parents, so that you may gain insight straight from the people who ultimately make the decisions. Regardless of whether you will apply to a particular school being highlighted, you should listen to all of the episodes, as each guest will give you tremendous insight and advice on every aspect of the college admissions process, prompting you to come up with your own follow-up questions for when you visit campus or meet with a college admissions representative yourself. Lastly, if you have any questions you'd like me to cover on future episodes or any comments you'd like to share, please email me at collegeadmissionstalk@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at www.collegeadmissionstalk.com. So are you ready? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Timothy Lee, who is the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Moyne College in beautiful Syracuse, New York. Tim, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
John, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. We're doing well. Looking forward to the chat.
Looking forward to it. It is our honor and pleasure. So, Tim, let me ask you, what is it about Moyne College that makes it so appealing for so many students to want to apply and ultimately attend?
Yeah, thanks. I think we have a great academic reputation, which I think is very important. And I think when students visit or families visit, they really do feel the community and the family here. That faculty go out of their way to make them feel welcomed, try to answer all their questions. And I've worked at a number of different places, and sometimes that's kind of like a sales pitch. But I think that's one thing that students say once they're here, that they truly feel that how they felt during their visit, during the application process, during the review process, that those feelings stayed with them throughout their 4 years here. So I think that's a lot to do with it. I think we do a really great job preparing students for life, right? Whether that's graduate school or the job afterwards. We're a Jesuit college. It's a 500-year-old tradition. And while I think a lot of students don't necessarily look for that or know what that means on the way in, they're glad that they received those benefits while they were here. And it reflects really well in our exit surveys that, the Jesuit values that they're taught here, no matter what their discipline is.
Well, we appreciate that. The academic reputation. I read that you were written up for being one of the best values in the country at Moyne College. And you mentioned the Jesuit nature of Moyne. Tim, could you elaborate on that? What exactly is the Jesuit philosophy?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it goes back 500 years, and we're one of 27 Jesuit institutions in the United States. It's really, care of the whole person, or as we say, cura personalis in the Jesuit vernacular. What does that mean? You're not just going to come here and learn a topic. You're going to learn how that topic impacts the world. So you can come here and study finance and learn how to make money for people and be well off yourself, but you're going to learn to do it in an ethical way. You're going to learn that if you are well off, how do you make the community around you better? If you're going to study nursing, it's not just solving an ailment. It's how do you deal with the psychological needs of the patient? How do you handle the family? It's not just trying to heal somebody. It's all that goes along with that. And then the other word that we use quite a bit is the magis, which is more. And no matter what your goals are, no matter what it is you want to do, is that good enough, right? And how can you always strive to be better and make the world around you a little bit better? So I think that really resonates with students these days, especially those who are really interested in activism and the social welfare of the communities around us.
Well, I appreciate that. And of course, making the community better. How are you going to contribute? Those are tremendous values, in addition, again, to the tremendous academic opportunities that you have for your students on campus. So let's talk a little bit about off campus and time outside of the classroom, Tim. What can you tell us about life on and off campus at Moyne College?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, we are in Syracuse. Syracuse is a decent sized city, especially in New York State. It's a college town. But at the same time, we also border on the town of DeWitt. So you really have the best of both worlds. You're 5 minutes from downtown, but you're also in a very suburban, safe location. Um, throughout outside the classroom, certainly we promote leadership. We have a lot of leadership opportunities. Entrepreneurship is very big on our campus. We know that students learn differently now than they did pre-COVID. Clubs, activities, community service, study abroad is all very big. Um, we have a really special performing arts community here on campus, and not only do they do their own performing arts, but they get involved with the performing arts community not only in Syracuse but also throughout New York State. And our athletic program is certainly well known. And I think we do really well from an athletic point of view, but not just varsity athletics, but club and intramurals as well. So we'd like to give students the opportunities to engage in the community, but at the same time, keep them busy outside of the classroom and turn them into the leaders that we want to graduate.
Well, we appreciate that overview, and I particularly like the fact that you talked about that it's a safe location. That's something that's obviously very important to a lot of the parents out there, and of course, the students. So we appreciate that, Tim. And so, could you walk us through the overall application process at Lemoyne, such as, Tim, do you evaluate by high school, by region, intended major? Whatever insight that you could offer would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, sure. So we do a little bit of everything. I would say about 90% of our applicants are read by the counselor who serves that territory. So for instance, our person who visits high schools in Long Island will read all of the applications from Long Island. We like the fact that they work with the same students through the process for sometimes 18 to 24 months. They're familiar with the schools. They get familiar with the school counselors, and we just think it really works really well that way. In Central New York, right? Simply because it's our we have a lot of feeder schools in Central New York. We will break up the high schools by certain individuals. So, for instance, I have 5 or 6 high schools that I read exclusively. Um, and then you have a few outliers, and those are I think our academic programs that are a little more that are tougher to get into, right? Our nursing program, we have a direct entry PA program, so those will all be read by the counselor who manage those programs. And what's nice about that is you have consistency from who's reviewing them. They eliminate the bias from, okay, this is my high school, right? They read them all collectively. So those are the few of the programs that would have additional processes, different reviews, possibly interviews that are required by that. But overall, we try to get through the applications as quickly as possible. We try to do a fair evaluation. Certainly, if we need more information, we feel that we're connected enough with the counseling community that we can reach out and get some additional information or wait for mid-year grades or something like that. And I think ultimately, right, we want to make college accessible. We try to eliminate barriers or games that some schools might have to play in order to make their profile look a little different. So it's important to us to be as transparent in the process as possible.
Well, we appreciate that. And obviously, like you said, your counselors are familiar with the schools, but also the guidance counselors that work in the various high schools within the tri state area and beyond. But I'm curious, Tim, how do you differentiate if one school, for example, offers a multitude of APs? For example, one school that offers 20 APs and another perhaps that only offers five. How do you differentiate between the two during your overall application process?
Yeah, and that's a good question. We have a rigor index that we do use that is factored into a review process, and that's something that we adjust each year, right? But I also think it's important that we review an application within the confines of the school that the student's attending. I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've had parents call me saying, well, if my son went to this school instead of this school, they would have had a 95 average instead of an 85 average. And my answer is typically, I don't know if that's true or not, right? I can only base an evaluation on where the student went. And I think that's part of a holistic process, right? We know some schools are very well resourced and some aren't. And some students have different challenges, which is why for me, a GPA, a test score is just part of the story, right? We want to make sure a student can be successful, right? The worst thing we can do is admit someone and have them not be successful, or have them, fail out or not come back because they're not happy. So we try to do that within the confines of the schools, and trying to understand where the student is in relation to the school they're going to.
Hey John, this is Alina from the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. Dormify makes shopping for college totally stress-free. They've truly thought about everything and have nailed small space living. From the charging storage carts to the charging headboards, they have so many products that are both functional and stylish. They even sell bags that make move-in day easier. I couldn't survive dorm living without the extra storage from Dormify. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Alina, for introducing Dormify to our listeners. Dormify is a one-stop shop for stylish and functional dorm decor, offering a wide range of stylish and functional products for anyone looking to decorate their dorms or small spaces. From bedding to wall decorations to storage solutions, Dormify has everything you need to transform your living space into a comfortable and stylish home away from home. Use our exclusive coupon code College Talk, that's one word, College Talk, to save 15% on most products when you shop at dormify.com or through the link provided in the show notes. Please note that if you make a purchase through the affiliate link or coupon code we provided, the podcast will receive a small commission from Dormify. But rest assured, we would only promote products that we truly believe in and think will benefit our listeners. And now, back to the show. Well, we appreciate that. And Tim, could you share what is your mid 50% range in terms of GPA and any other information that you collect, such as SAT or ACT scores? And if a student falls below that mid 50, what are some of the things that they can do to enhance their overall application?
Our overall GPA is about a 3.5, so that middle 50% is about a 3.3 to a 3.7 or so, like that. And same with test scores as well, right? We are optional. I know we'll probably talk about that in a little bit. Our middle range is our average SAT is about 1210. So the middle range is about 1180 to 1240. I would answer that question now a little bit differently versus pre-COVID, right? Again, we try to look at holistic, right? Two students with the same GPA in the same classes can tell very different stories, right? Did a student improve, or did a student go the opposite direction? Was a student involved? And if they were involved, are they jotting down 20 clubs just to say I showed up to a meeting, or are they doing 5 things very passionately? So I think there's a lot of different stories in there. I'm a big fan of students who self-advocate, right? There's going to be some students who just aren't going to meet certain thresholds for some of our programs. They can still come to Moyne, and there's pathways for them to get there if that's where they eventually want to be. But a 17-year-old is not supposed to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their lives at the same time. So I think, we pride ourselves on that, the personal relationships at Moyne. So I feel the more we get to know a student, we can look beyond the grades, right? And at least take other factors into consideration, which I think is important.
And recently, with everyone going test optional, the mid 50% in terms of the SAT and ACT scores may be a little skewed because only students that have solid scores are submitting.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that your mid 50% in terms of SAT and ACT scores, is it on the rise?
Yeah, it's on the rise, and yes, I think yes, you have your students who aren't submitting the scores. You also have students who I think are applying to different levels of institutions, and I'll give you an example. Right, we're in Central New York. We do cross with Cornell in certain markets. Right, what Cornell is looking for, right, to be considered. We would love to take those scores. Right, so someone has put in their application, we know that they're applying to Cornell or another highly selective institution that and they want to put in higher test scores, and they feel that um, maybe that won't be good enough, so they put on their Common App, don't count my scores, right? So I think we counsel the students to, hey, maybe you should consider these scores, and at the same time, how you perform on a 3-hour test. I have initials after my name, and the 3 times I took the SAT, my critical reading score was much to be desired. And when I sit with staff members in my career and they say this student only has this, I try to remind them that your boss, you have to call doctor in public, had lower scores than that. So I think it comes down to the grit but if for those who want us to consider them, we will consider them. But we also, our job is to counsel them through that process as well.
Well, we appreciate that. And so, what are the different ways a student may apply to Lemoyne? And is there a benefit to applying one way over the other?
So we basically have 3 different ways. We have our own homegrown application. We're members of Common App, and we're also this year we're members of the coalition through SCORE. A majority of our applications come through Common App. We don't have a preference, right? Whatever's easier for the student. It's a stressful enough time. We're going to eliminate as many hoops as we can that students have to jump through in order to apply. We're going to read them all the same. If a student has a question about that, we'll happy to help them out through that.
Well, I appreciate that. And Tim, I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, of course, in this case, it's for Lemoyne, in the show notes. If there's any other link that you want me to include, just provide it to me. And of course, I'll put it in the show notes for the students and the parents.
Great.
And Tim, you mentioned this earlier, the fact that Lemoyne is currently test optional. What can you share in terms of the percentage of students that apply and that are ultimately admitted in terms of the percentage that did not submit their test scores?
Yeah, we've seen it change over the last few years, and as we've got through COVID, we've become, I guess, more optional, right? We were always optional except for certain programs or for certain considerations. But as we hit COVID, right, we talked to the faculty and said, I know you require tests for this. You're not going to have a class, right? Because some students weren't able to take the exams. So we're 100% optional. I don't see us ever moving away from that. In fact, I believe we were one of the first Jesuit colleges to go test optional. And I think some people thought we were crazy, and now a lot of them are test optional. Only about 30 to 33% of our incoming class gave us test scores. And so that's I've been here for about 5 years, so it went from about 55, 60% down to about a third. And we're fine with that, right? Our retention has remained really solid, right? We've actually, our retention's above our 10-year average, right? So we feel that our review that we do of the high school transcript is really the best indicator of success.
Well, you kind of touched upon the next question that I was going to ask because you're looking at your retention rate. You're not seeing much of a negative difference. So let me just ask you anyway, Tim, where do you see the test optional trend going in the future?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue. I think you're going to see more institutions and state systems not require it. I think some schools are doing, pilot programs for 3 or 4 years. It'll be interesting to see some of the results of that. We know MIT went back to, requiring tests, and they had their rationale, and I don't fault them for that. But I think when you see all the additional stress that the tests put on, and most of us who work in this field don't see a correlation between high test scores and success, right? I think you're going to see more and more institutions not require and go the SAT optional route.
Well, we appreciate that. And obviously, the next few years are going to be very interesting because a lot of reps are reporting just that.
Mhm.
They're new to the test optional world. And so they want to collect data over the next 3, 4 years to see if there are any significant differences. So we appreciate that, Tim. Thank you. And speaking of tests, what about AP, IB, and dual enrollment classes? Does Lemoyne College accept them for credit?
Yes, we do. I'd probably say almost all or a vast majority of students coming in have some level of pre-Lemoyne credits that they're coming in with. I think we're pretty liberal with what we take, but at the same time, so for instance, if you're a biology major, we're going to want to see a higher level of success in those courses or in those tests than just like a pass. Um, simply because it's going to set you up for future success. But yeah, we're we welcome that. A lot of schools in Central New York have dual enrollment programs with area community colleges, and we work with them on that as well.
And what are some examples of college essays that really stuck with you, Tim? And what advice would you share with prospective students in terms of what to think about when they're sitting down getting ready to write that college essay?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I mean, we can do an hour workshop on this, right? There's no magical formula, I think, right? So I think there's three essays that have stood out to me, and again, I've done this for about 23 years. One is one that I read this year, and I think a young lady talked about her own mental health issues without just coming out and saying it, right? And she started off with saying, she likes to fix broken things. She talked about herself, and then talked about how the people around her who are broken, she wants to help. So I just felt that was very honest.
Wow.
Another one I read a few years ago, a young man was talking about playing baseball, and he started out, it was the bottom of the ninth inning, and he was up, and he told the story of the baseball game and this hit that he hit off the wall, and how he was rounding all the bases, but also how it paralleled with his life. And the essay ended before we knew if he scored or not. And I think four or five of us read it separately without talking to each other, and we were all like, "Did you read that essay?" And when we finally met the young man, he said, "Oh yeah, I scored. I wanted to hold you all, in suspense." And then the third one, which I wouldn't recommend you do, but this is such an outlier in all the essays I've read. There was a young man who actually wrote an essay about mocking the entire college visit process.
Wow.
Now, I don't take myself too seriously, and I like humor, so I like the fact that they went with this approach. Luckily, he was admissible, right? And when I finally met the young man, he had a laugh about it, and I said, "I hope it wasn't this institution. This was a previous institution I worked at." If it was this institution, I wouldn't be here right now. Um, so it's. I think what's important is, and I'll give a couple of examples, and this could be a sensitive topic as well. I want to read something about you that I can't read by looking at your application or what your school counselor or your recommendation is going to write. If you're just reiterating what's on your transcript, then you're not telling me anything special about you, right? And the essay is the one part where it's really about you. That's one area you have control over, right? What you did in 10th grade English is over and done with, right? What a principal or a school counselor writes about you, you can't control. So I think that's really important. And I think it's important to be original and, having fun with it, right? This isn't I don't think this isn't a senior thesis that you get a thumbs up or thumbs down and you can graduate or not, right? The one thing that, I've spent my entire career in New York, right, at New York institutions. And there's been three major incidents in New York in my time that I've read thousands and thousands of essays about. And one is 9/11. The second one is, Superstorm Sandy, which, hit Long Island and Staten Island really hard. And the third one is COVID, right? And while everybody has their own story in relation to those situations, right? What happens is the first one you read is riveting, right? And then the second one you read is riveting, but maybe 99% is riveting. By the time you get to the 50th essay about Superstorm Sandy, you've read what you're not hearing anything different, right? So while those have a personal impact on a family, and certainly we would love to know that, I think you have to think about, is everybody else in my cohort writing about this as well, right? So I think being original, and if you are going to use a topic like that, spin it in a way that I don't know you're talking about a life-changing event that 40 other students are, until I get to the bottom of the essay. So I think that's some advice that I would give.
Well, those are great pieces of advice. You shared examples that you really liked. You gave that one that you liked it, but you recommend that you don't do something like that.
Right.
And you talk about the overall application, right? There's multiple parts, and each part needs to build on the next. So, to your point, an essay, you shouldn't be reiterating what's already there in the transcript, on the activity sheet, or what have you. So I really appreciate that answer, Tim. Thank you. And of course, the teacher letters of recommendation are obviously another part of the overall application. What are you looking for in terms of helping to enhance an application from the teacher's letters? And if you could provide any examples, Tim, that would be great.
Yeah. And when you say recommendation, right, I think we also see this trend of going away from, paragraphs in a story to almost bullet points, right? And, so we're seeing that pick up quite a bit. I think what we're looking for in a recommendation is, again, not to reiterate what's on the transcript or what's in what's in the activity section, for instance, but hopefully someone who knows you well enough that can speak to your character and speak to either how hard you work or what did you overcome or what impact you left in the high school or the community that you're coming from. I think that's all very important. I also think it's important that, without that recommendation or without context of a recommendation, let's say, for instance, I struggled in 10th grade geometry, right? Maybe I got a D in it. And as someone who's reading an application, I may say, well, that student just didn't care. They didn't put in the effort. So if there is a bump in the road and it's because something happened, right? I'd like to see that the recommendation or someone who wrote a recommendation can reference that, because without that, I don't know the context. It could have been they had 3 teachers that year. It could have been that the student was sick or they had a death in the family and that impacted one class. So I think, character is important, right? And I think, just some context about some grades or some performance that would be an outlier in an application is important.
I want to welcome back Sean Patel, who is the founder and CEO of Prep Expert. He's a Shark Tank entrepreneur making a deal with Mark Cuban back in 2016. And he's also a board certified dermatologist who received a perfect score on his SAT. Sean, welcome back. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back, John. So I just wanted to share with all your listeners real quick that we have an amazing partnership with the College Admissions Process podcast, and we have a really special offer for all of your listeners. So for any listener who wants to enroll their student into one of our Prep Expert SAT courses, ACT courses, or one-on-one tutoring programs, you can get 30% off just for being a listener of the College Admissions Process podcast. All you need to do is put in the promo code College Talk, one word, just College Talk, and that'll give you 30% off all Prep Expert SAT courses, ACT courses, or one-on-one tutoring packages. Make sure you use the link in the show notes of the College Admissions Process podcast.
Thank you, Sean. We really appreciate it. To our listeners, as an affiliate partner with Prep Expert, I want to be transparent with you that for every purchase made using our coupon code, which is College Talk, the College Admissions Process podcast will receive a small commission from Prep Expert. But rest assured that we only promote programs that we believe in and feel would benefit our listeners. For more information, please see the Prep Expert affiliate partnership link in the show notes. And now let's get back to the show. Well, we appreciate that. And again, it talks to enhancing the overall application. Each part has to build on the next. So students, if something happened in a particular class, when you ask your teacher to write the letter of recommendation, there's nothing wrong with asking the teacher to perhaps mention that story. Maybe something you contributed to. Maybe it was a conversation in class. Maybe it was a project. Maybe it was a humanitarian effort. I don't know. But if there was something that was a deviation from the norm that occurred, something new to add to your application, don't be shy. Just ask the teacher if they wouldn't mind talking about it to, again, enhance your overall application. And the worst thing that could happen is they say no, which, is fine.
Right.
But the answer to every question you don't ask is no, students. So don't be shy. Ask the question if something special happened that's going to enhance your overall application.
Yeah. I would also add, the toughest thing is someone who's going into their senior year trying to find their favorite English teacher to write that recommendation, and that same teacher's being asked by 45 other students. I think,
Right.
for parents or students who are, in ninth and 10th grade, you need to start thinking about who's going to write your recommendation now. And if you hit it off with a teacher or a coach or somebody else in ninth or 10th grade, keep in contact with that person. And before you leave junior year, say, hey, I'd really like if you write a recommendation. Then that person has all summer to at least reflect on it, as opposed to, we all know what it's like coming back at the beginning of a school year or a semester. It's absolutely crazy. So just give those writing the recommendation time to give a fair assessment.
Well, those are great pieces of advice. And, as someone who has written many over the years as a high school principal, and even when I was a teacher, it's always appreciated when someone comes to you in the spring of junior year to say, hey, would you mind writing this recommendation letter for me? And of course, I always do. But to your point, myself, all the teachers, we appreciate it when, we're given that advance
Yeah.
notice. Thank you so much, Tim. And what about a student that may have had an IEP while in high school? What do you offer to help ensure that once they're on your campus, they continue to be successful?
Yeah. Well, I don't think the application is a time to shy away from something like that. I think you throw it out there because, you know, if we're going to admit somebody, if we don't know that someone, has an IEP or needs special accommodations in this area, then we're not going to know to tell our folks on campus, hey, so and so needs these efforts. So I think that's important, right? Be open and honest about that in the application process. And then, we have a number of different services on our campus: support services, tutoring, any accommodation a student needs, we'll provide it for that student. But I think it's important that a student makes they self-advocate for that, right? If someone had certain accommodations made in high school, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll transfer over at the college level. But that's something students should ask about when they visit campuses. They should speak to the person in charge of those services on campus. Um, they should speak to their advisor. And I think as long as students are open and honest about themselves, and it's not a negative, right? It's just, this is what someone needs in order to make the most of their college experience. They just need to self-advocate and make sure that they ask those questions, especially during the decision-making process. You'd hate to get somewhere and realize you didn't ask this important question, and maybe something's not offered in the same capacity that you had in high school.
Well, we appreciate that. And Tim, before we end, are there any questions that I didn't ask that you wish I did? Or is there anything else you want to leave us about Lemoyne College?
No, I think you asked a lot of great questions. I think sometimes, a lot of families get caught up with a name brand, or, they look at their rankings. And I think students and families have to see, okay, what's most important to them, right? We're really proud of the fact that we're highly ranked. We're proud of the fact that we're value. And we like to say that when you combine those two, no other private school in New York State, provides value with the results that we have, like Lemoyne. And it really comes down to what you're looking for, right? I worked at a large state institution previous to Lemoyne, and some students want that 600-person lecture hall and kind of disappear. And if they meet their professor, great, right? If not, they'll get to know the teacher's assistant or the grad assistant up there. We pride ourselves on the individualized attention, right? If a student falls through the cracks here, it's because they choose to not take advantage of those opportunities. And I think that's really important. And that's why our retention is really high. That's why our job placement and grad placement is really high. One of our seniors just got into Michigan Law School over the weekend, so we're celebrating that on campus. And so I think these are all things that I think parents and families should really consider when they're going through the process.
Well, those are great pieces of advice. I'm glad I asked that question. And this has been a tremendous conversation, Dr. Lee. We really appreciate it. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the conversation. So let me ask,
Yeah.
what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide students and their parents getting ready for the college admissions process?
I think it's really important to stay organized. Come up with a list, dates. You can be applying, you can be interested in 10 different schools that all have different dates and deadlines. And if you're not organized and if you don't stay on top of that list, you're going to end up making a hasty decision at the end of it, right?
Right.
I think, too, there's really no early time to start this process. And I think when, most families think, okay, I have a junior in high school, I should start visiting. We went away over Thanksgiving to Florida. I have a freshman in high school, and it does snow in Syracuse, despite how beautiful it is. She doesn't want to go to college in the snow. I also realize she's 15 and she doesn't know what she wants, right? But we went to Florida for Thanksgiving, and we visited 2 college campuses down there. It wasn't, we never said we're going to spend our vacation doing this, but as we travel with sports and we visit friends in other parts of the country, we try to carve out one day to start looking at colleges, because who knows when we're going to get down to Florida again, right? And if my daughter really does want to go south, we got to either deal with that now, or she's going to make a rush decision. So take advantage of those family opportunities when you're away. If your high school or club or something is doing something at a college, just don't go to the event. Spend an hour, and if you can't take an official tour, drive around campus, walk around campus, go to schools in your hometown. You may want to go away from your hometown, but think about it. If you're in Syracuse, you can go look at Syracuse University, which is a large research institution with 30,000 students, and you can look at Moyne, which has 3,000 students. And you may not want to stay in Syracuse, but at least you have an idea of what a large and small school is, so you'll know what you like. So I think that's important. And then finally, I really think there's a college that fits everybody, right? And you may have your heart set on one institution, and maybe they don't feel the same way about you, and no one likes to be told no or feel denied or rejected. It's going to be all right. Many people went to their second, third, fourth choice, and whether you got in or whether you can afford it, right? There's a place for everybody. So I think keep an open mind, understand that there might be setbacks along the way. And, if you do this correctly, you're going to make the right choice, and it's going to work out in the long run.
Well, those are tremendous answers. I really appreciate it, Dr. Lee, particularly starting early and even starting in your own backyard. You mentioned if someone happens to live in Syracuse, they could obviously visit Moyne College. They could visit Syracuse University, which of course are 2 very different schools in terms of size. But also when you're on those family trips, whether it's through athletics or anything else,
Mm-hmm.
take the time to go and visit. Like you said, you were down in Florida with your freshmen and you visited some schools. I think that's great advice. Too many people start the process late, and that's part of the anxiety and stress that becomes a part of it if you start too late. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it's really never too early to start. So we really appreciate that. This has been a tremendous conversation. I know that this is going to help so many students and their parents. So I'm really happy about that, Dr. Lee. I can't thank you enough, and I hope to have you again.
Awesome. John, thanks so much, and look forward to it. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Our pleasure. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the CAP.